Watch and burn.
Hey everyone, so tonight I wanted to discuss Philip Glass's solo piano. This was released a number of years back. Specifically, this was released back in 1989. And the reason that I've been meaning actually to talk about this record for some time now, and the reason that god damn it, that fucking ring is cut off, and that drives me crazy. Come on, don't make a big thing out of this. There, that's better. Okay. Yeah, the reason that I've been meaning to discuss this for so long is because this, to me, this is like the height of Glass's like classic period. This record, it perfectly encapsulates, I would say, both the 80s and Glass's ability to create like a subdued sense of chaos, I suppose, within his compositions. And, you know, it feels like these tracks want to break free and just go for it, but he keeps like pulling them back. And whereas he does that with a lot of his stuff, like there's a lot of heavy repetition in Philip Glass's really, all of his releases actually have a heavy sense of repetition, and unfortunately it has caused a lot of people to sort of compare it to like chamber music, or worse yet, like sleep aids, where, you know, I've read reviews where people are like, hey, I put on music in 12 parts and within 10 minutes I'm out like a light. And I always found that to be kind of rude, and it's very dismissive, because despite the fact that his music does rely heavily on repetition, I would never say any of it has ever caused me to feel tired, or definitely not sleepy, and not, you know, I don't think I could fall asleep to his music, because I find his music too engaging. Like, I find there's that swirling sense of madness to the majority of his work that it's always kept me on my toes. And whereas the repetition is heavy, I've never, like I said, I've never felt that it was something that I would use to sort of fall asleep to. Now, with this, the thing that I like about solo piano is with every single track on here, it reminds me of the 80s. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, but when I try to, like, when I'm recording these videos, I try to stay away from the technical side of things. Like, I don't want to talk about the production, and, you know, I don't want to talk about like the process of the writing process, sorry. It's more like I try to just go off how the records make me feel. And this record has always made me feel like, I was in New York during rush hour in like the 1980s. And I say rush hour, and I know like rush hour in any city is crazy, and let alone New York. But at the same time, there's like a swirling sense of the familiar here. And whereas it does feel sort of chaotic at times, it also feels very calm and very peaceful, like I know where I'm going in New York throughout the 1980s. And of course, I've never been to New York. I think I've only been out of the country once, and that was to go to Disneyland. And I've definitely never been to New York in the 1980s, which it would have been an awesome place to be in the 1980s. But unfortunately, that was a little before my ability to travel would have taken off. I was perhaps a little on the young side, you know? But with this record, I found that his repetition play is less, and the tracks on here, whereas there is that sense of sameness, I suppose, these tracks, they keep veering off in their own unique directions. And whereas the first handful of tracks are a number of metamorphoses, each of them stand on their own. They're built off the same foundation, of course, but none of them fall into like that locked groove of a Philip Glass record where it is that endless sense of repetition playing in the background. I found each of these tracks to be really energized, and they sound really fresh and bright, and again, they remind me of the 80s. Like this, I would say Philip Glass's first classic period would have been the 80s. And in a lot of ways, at least as far as classical music was concerned, the 80s belonged to Philip Glass. I mean, he had done a number of landmark releases throughout the 80s, from Koyaanisqatsi right up through 1,000 Airplanes on the Roof to like Liquid Days and this. I mean, Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Michael Nyman did a number of really killer things throughout the 1980s too. So in a sense, you could kind of have Glass and Nyman together in like a steel cage death match to see who would emerge victorious as like the king composer of the 1980s. Because those works that they did, especially Nyman stuff that he did for the Peter Greenaway films that he scored, they are so 80s as well. But at the same time, I don't know, actually. Now that I've said that, I don't know who was more 80s. I think I would, by default, I would go with Philip Glass, because that is when he released Satyagraha was in the 80s, Aachen was in the 80s, like I said, Koyaanisqatsi, Liquid Days, Thousand Airplanes. So in that sense, I would give the 80s to Philip Glass. But yeah, Michael Nyman, he did some pretty remarkable stuff in that decade too, sorry. But yeah, that doesn't matter. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to stop there, because how many times can I say that like there's that sort of like subdued sense of chaos, which is definitely at play at this record. There's something really calming to each of these tracks, and yet under the surface, there's something bubbling, and it's begging to be set free, and it is a little on the crazy side. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but that is how this record has always made me feel. And I'm going to leave it there. So thank you so much for hanging out with me while I discussed Philip Glass's 1989 album, Solo Piano. If you like this review, don't forget to do something nice for somebody. And don't forget that you guys are amazing. And this is year 3 now. So this is like 2024, 2025. So assuming the world is still here, everybody's still watching YouTube, thank you for staying with me for upwards of 3 years. And wait, now that I pointed that out, I have to remember that I can't release this earlier, because otherwise I'll look stupid. I'm going to have to mark the video. Okay, so thank you so much. Have a good night. I just wanted to say thank you for making it through the entire video. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to remind everyone one more time, even though I've probably already done this in the video that you just watched, to please click the like button as well as the subscribe button, because it helps this channel grow. And thank you for hitting like and subscribe, and we will see you guys really soon.